Welcome everyone to the 2011 NFL Draft. We have the Green Bay Packers on the clock, and they are taking who else but Von Miller. This was a very easy decision for the Green Bay Packers. They had a lot of different gaps on their team that they needed to fix, but they already have Matthew Stafford, despite throwing 30-plus interceptions last year in his sophomore year. They're not going to give up on him just yet. They still want to see where they can go with this team. So Von Miller, being one of the most talented players of this draft, is going to be a huge boost for this Green Bay Packers team. And I think he's going to cause a lot of havoc, a lot of problems. So when you have the chance to get a defensive player that's going to last for a long time, you take on that risk. You take on that opportunity. And Von Miller is going to do that for them. Now, as for the Miami Dolphins, who are on the clock right now, they are also in a major transition period. They have new head coach Jim Harbaugh in his first year. As you can see, they are the 32nd ranked offense, and so they definitely need a spark. They did draft Jimmy Clausen last year in the second round. They had Clausen, Smoker, Jeff Smoker specifically at QB last year, and just had a hard time of making anything happen. But this year, what you will see now is with the second overall pick in the NFL draft, the pick is in, and the pick is none other than quarterback Cam Newton from Auburn. Now, I think this is an excellent pick for the Miami Dolphins. They are in a division with Alex Smith and Tom Brady, who are two of the top three quarterbacks in the league. And so Cam Newton is now going to give the Miami Dolphins a kind of 1-2 punch. They have not had a solid quarterback since Steve McNair. And when they had McNair, they were dynamic and they were fantastic. So I expect them to sort of get back to that high caliber offense with a quarterback like Cam Newton. But now we're going to get to the Houston Texans. So the Texans are 5-12. They had a terrible year. Gary Kubiak was fired, and as you can see, Jeff Fisher from the Tennessee Titans is moving in as the head coach for the Titans. They are also a QB-needy team. They had David Garrard the past 2 years, and that just did not work out for them very well. So as you can see, they are probably looking at a quarterback in this position. Yes, there are many other gaps they could use. They could go with a receiver like Julio Jones or A.J. Green and really give them a real target for whoever that new QB is. But when we look at the biggest need in this franchise right now, they don't really have many options. So as we get down to this next selection here, you see some more Cam Newton highlights there, that beautiful run by him. But the pick is in, and the Houston Texans select quarterback Jake Locker from Washington. Now, although the Houston Texans could use some more talent around this team, they are in a prime position to get the speedster Jake Locker. This is a good pick for them here with the Texans. So we see them kind of trying to get that next level quarterback, next level player. They're going up against David Carr, who used to be with them and now in Jacksonville. They're going up against the kind of Kevin O'Connell, Josh Freeman Titans. We'll see how that turns out, but also Peyton Manning. So Locker is an explosive quarterback for them, will be the quarterback for their future. Now we see the Denver Broncos are on the clock with first-year head coach Doug Marrone after the failure of Jim Fassel. They ranked very poorly on offense, and they have a lot of work to do. They did draft Sam Bradford last year, and they signed quarterback Josh McCown in free agency. So they've made some offseason improvements, but there's definitely more to be done. Right now, they probably are going to go with a more immediate impact player in the draft. And so once we get the pick in here, which the pick is in and ready to go, we'll go ahead and have the screen change real shortly with this last Locker highlight, because with the fourth overall pick, the Denver Broncos select A.J. Green, wide receiver out of Georgia. So this is I think, a great pick on their part. A huge acquisition. A.J. Green is going to be really good for them moving into the future. Bradford needs some targets. Wes Welker is good. as a Broncos receiver. Miles Austin is good, but none of them are the same caliber as A.J. Green. So here we see A.J. Green going to Denver. I think this is a match made in heaven for them. You can see some of the highlights there. A.J. Green is going to really give them a major boost for this franchise. But now we'll start talking about the Arizona Cardinals. So the Cardinals have Phillip Rivers, who as a quarterback was one of the top 10 passers. They have Calvin Johnson Jr., Troy Williamson, Santana Moss, all these really great receivers. They had Tony Gonzalez for a while. They probably could use a tight end. But they have all these weapons, and they just fail to come away with much success. We're going to go ahead and see here just where they land because they're going to probably go with the best available player because they do have a variety of needs, and they're just going to go with one of the top-notch players. So once we go through some of these A.J. Green highlights, hope you enjoy the presentation of this draft. I had some more time to really prepare for this, so I wanted to make it as immersive as possible. But we see with the Cardinals, they've been sticking with Ken Wisenhunt. They did make the playoffs 2 years ago, but this year they just were not able to keep up with that NFC West. Too many good players making an impact. Let's see, what else do I want to talk about with the Cardinals? Yeah, the Cardinals, I mean, in free agency, they focused on guard, so Steve Hutchinson and Adam Snyder. So they fixed some of their interior line, but of course they are going to need some more support there to kind of help this team that has so much talent grow with more talent. Because last year they focused on DT with like Tyson Alualu. They got Roger Saffold at right tackle, Ed Dixon at tight end, Navarro Bowman. So there's some more work to be done. But with this 5th overall pick, the Arizona Cardinals select defensive tackle Marcel Darius out of Alabama. So I think Darius is going to be very good for the Arizona Cardinals. Top-notch defender. They have said he is possibly one of the best defensive players in this draft, even above Von Miller. So here at number 5, Darius coming off the board should be no surprise to anyone. He's going to be a major help for this Cardinals team. Now the New Orleans Saints have Josh McDaniels in his 3rd season. They were last in the NFC South, but did see much more success with Tim Tebow with a number 1 overall pick last year. Tebow had some good success, and he looked better than Sam Bradford. But again, neither of those two teams are really that far apart in the draft order. But yeah, Tim Tebow, Pat Angerer, Linval Joseph, 2 tight ends, Fendi Anobin and Anthony McCoy, wide receiver David Nelson. Not the best draft, but they do get some pieces there to help that defense. So again, the Saints don't really need a quarterback here. They can probably take one of the better skilled players at this point. I'm not seeing, and in that division when they're dealing with the 49ers and Drew Brees, St. Louis Rams with Jay Cutler, and the Rams really took off this year. The Rams won the division. Seattle with Derek Anderson and Vince Young are kind of a potentially vulnerable team. I'm sorry, I was going into the NFC West. They're dealing with the Panthers. They're dealing with the number 1 defense. They're dealing with the Falcons, who were the number 1 defense a year ago. They have a lot of challenges in the South that they're trying to overmatch. And then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers made the Super Bowl this year. So the Saints are trying to be more competitive against those teams. And as you can see, their pick here is going to be who other than cornerback Patrick Peterson from LSU. Patrick Peterson is absolutely a star here. You'll see some of these highlights with him. Just fantastic. He was such a talented player. I don't see them going anywhere else here. I think this is a good pick for them. He's going to be a kick returner for them, which is something that they've needed. And they're also going to go with that defensive back who's going to be an anchor for the next decade. Now, the Cleveland Browns are also on the clock here with Jim Tressel's 2nd year as coach. They had quarterback issues, right? They had Matt Castle, Kevin Cobb. They tried Troy Smith out, but neither one worked out. None of them did. Last year, they focused with Marquise Pouncey at center. They drafted TJ Ward, Owusu Ansah, cornerback, Joik Bell. But they had some other needs that need to be addressed. Now, they are always looking to be more competitive on the defensive side of the ball. So we look at the AFC North with the Bengals, who were fantastic this year, the Pittsburgh Steelers, who can always be a threat, and Baltimore, who's been kind of weak these past few years. They were strong in the early part of my franchise with Mark Bulger at quarterback. Ravens still trying to find themselves, but of course are also a dynamic team. Browns trying to compete in this division, and they're trying to do it with their coach, Jim Tressel. So here we can see the Browns possibly taking QB. They could possibly take Ingram at running back after failing on D'Angelo Williams. But with the 7th overall pick, the Cleveland Browns select middle linebacker Bruce Carter. So yes, they pass on Julio Jones. They pass on, just like they did in real life when they traded back. But they decided to go with who's arguably the best linebacker in this draft, according to experts. And he probably won't pan out entirely well, because most Browns picks don't. But you can see there he's a hard hitter. Cleveland's really happy with this pick. They feel like he's going to be a dynamic pass rusher, dynamic coverage linebacker for them, hard hitter, so good for them. Now the Dallas Cowboys are on the clock, and they have new head coach Mike Shanahan. So a lot of gaps here, a lot of needs that this team must address. We don't know if they're going to stick with Tony Romo and Joe Webb heading into next year. They have not done anything yet to address quarterback. Last year they went with Eric Berry at free safety, Dexter McCluster, the dual man at running back and wide receiver, DeAnthony Smith. They drafted Joe Webb. So they have a lot of gaps there that they need to really fix on this team. They got Mike Okwo, DeVito, and Chris McAllister in free agency, but they do decide to go with cornerback Jimmy Smith out of Colorado. They wanted to get one of the better DBs in this draft to go up against the Giants with Carson Palmer and the Eagles, Donovan McNabb. So I think Jimmy Smith is going to be good for them. Now, the Oakland Raiders with Hugh Jackson. Again, another team with a lot of gaps here. Who can Matt Ryan really build around? They have Sean Green at running back, who's been really good for them. They have a lot of old wide receivers, despite signing Craig Davis. So Oakland has a lot of gaps here, but what they're going to go with, and a pick I think is really good for them here, is going with the wide receiver out of Alabama, Julio Jones. So now we pair Julio Jones with Matt Ryan, but instead of in Atlanta, they're now together here in Oakland. So we'll see how that pick turns out. I think it's going to be great for them. And despite the challenges in Madden 22 playing with the Oakland Raiders, I think Madden 24, the Oakland Raiders are going to be a real threat, despite going up against Aaron Rodgers and going up against Eli Manning. And then Denver, if they can get their act together with Sam Bradford and the other top wide receiver pick in this draft, A.J. Green. Now we look at the Detroit Lions. The Lions have been a playoff team the past few years. Last year, not doing so great, going 7-10 with Chris Palmer and Brody Croyle. Some fans might want to move on from Croyle, even though he's been a surprise. He's one of the leading all-time passers for Detroit. They do sign Jason Hill, Jordan Gross, Dan Stevenson. And last year they ended up going with like Mike Iupati at O guard, Perry Riley Jr. at middle linebacker, Armonte Edwards, Sam Young. But here there's a lot of different potential options for them in this draft. But I think they're going to go with another BPA because there's several positions they could fix. Their defense, they have their studs like Lawrence Timmons on their defense. He's someone that's going to be an anchor for them. They have Alex Mack at center. They do have like Vance Walker and players like Jameel McClain, who was a decent pick at middle linebacker a few years back. Running back Reggie Bush. They have a lot of talent on their team, but they could use that quarterback. They could use some more talent overall on this team. So as we wind down the Julio Jones highlights, which again, there were many, it was hard not to include all of them. But I mean, man, Raiders are really in good shape. But with the 10th overall pick, the pick is in. The Detroit Lions select the best offensive lineman in this draft, left tackle Tyron Smith out of USC. So here we go. The Detroit Lions getting one of the best blockers to help Brody Croyle, to help Reggie Bush on this Detroit Lions offense. This is going to be a good pick for them, an anchor for their O-line for the next decade or so. But now we're going to move to Baltimore Ravens, who are on the clock. So the Ravens also struggling. They had a quarterback carousel with Matt Schaub. They drafted Mike Kafka in the second round last year, second round, 23rd overall pick. And their defense has not really been as stellar as the Baltimore Ravens defense should be. So despite some of those many challenges, we see the Ravens looking at trying to find which of these top defensive prospects are best for them. Maybe they can hit on a quarterback later like a Blaine Gabbert. Maybe they can get a Colin Kaepernick. Maybe even Andy Dalton. But with the 11th overall pick, Al Saunders in his second season makes the selection with the Ravens. Defensive end, Aldon Smith out of Mizzou. I know I put Missouri there, but Mizzou. I think this is a good pick for them. Aldon Smith, known for some off-the-field issues, known for being a very tough guy. I think that's a good attitude to bring to the Baltimore Ravens team, and that's what I did. I think that he's going to really make the Ravens defense a little bit more powerful than they've been. We all think of the Baltimore Ravens defense as the iconic defense of the 2000s. Although I still had that iconic defense, they never stayed that defense, ranking a little bit in the teens. As you can see, they were the 16th ranked defense. So they got some work to do, and we'll see if they decide to go with Josh Johnson at quarterback next year, or if they do take a quarterback later on in this draft. But as for the Atlanta Falcons, 7-10 last year. The year before, they were 12-5 with Jason Campbell at quarterback. Brad Childress has been fairly good with this team, and they've been on top. They were the number one team 2 years ago, but they kind of fell behind with the Panthers in this division and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who had that random surgence in the playoffs and going to the Super Bowl. Last year, they went with Darrell Washington on defense, Cam Chancellor, Rashad Jones, Greg Hardy. So some really solid defenders for this Atlanta Falcons defense, which helped them become, they surpassed the Panthers 2 years ago being the number one defense. But the Falcons now need to really focus on where they want to be as a defense moving forward. So as you can, as they narrow down some of these Aldon Smith highlights, which again there are many of them, we can look at some of their signings here, where they got Zach Miller and Dallas Sartz. Kind of a slow year for their signings, but I do believe Atlanta's going to make some moves here in this draft. They have a good drafting the past few years. I expect that to continue, and so with this 12th overall pick, the Atlanta Falcons select offensive tackle Nate Soldier out of Colorado. This is a good pick, as they're going to really focus on that blind side for Jason Campbell, and I think this is a good pick moving forward for them. And as for the Jaguars, I guess you can see they were third-ranked defense with Wade Phillips in his fourth year. They went 8-9, just missed the playoffs. They have their anchor quarterback with David Carr. He's been really good for them, even though he's in his 30s. The Jaguars have been, like last year, they got Nate Allen in the first round at safety, Patrick Robinson. So really focus on their DBs. Jason Werlitz, a lot of defensive prospects last year. So you might look to them this year to draft some offensive prospects to really help kind of get this team in a better position moving forward. And so with the 13th pick, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Mike Pouncey out of Florida. So Mike Pouncey going to the Jaguars keeps him in the state. I think this is a good pick for them, as they needed some help with their interior and offensive line. And you don't always get a center like Pouncey. The Browns got Marquise Pouncey. We saw Alex Mack also going as a center. Some of these players are just fantastic here in the teens or late rounds. So here we have the Jaguars getting their guy. Now, as for the Titans, so they're under Coach Hamilton for their fourth year, or his fourth season. They're 8-9. They were very close to making the playoffs again. They do have Kevin O'Connell at quarterback, and so They were second place in the AFC South, but the AFC South is weak. There's many different directions they could go with this pick. But here they go with the 14th pick in the draft. They draft offensive guard Danny Watkins. So they lost some of their O-line. They're trying to replace their O-line with some solid contributors there. Danny Watkins was seen as a very good guard here at this point. So we will see if that is the case. I know offensive linemen progress or regress very similarly. But now as we look to the Steelers, who are on the clock now, Lovie Smith is in year 8. He's won 2 Super Bowls. They had a really rough offense. They're the 7th ranked defense. So at 8 and 9, where do we think they're going to go? And with the talent available, they go with the 15th overall pick, J.J. Watt from Wisconsin. So here, instead of going for an offensive selection, they go defense. And now the big man, J.J. Watt. The fact that he made it here to 16, and I did not change his... I didn't pick him earlier than in real life, is just a shock. But the Steelers here now get a really solid contributor here on their defense. They already have Doomerville, Dan Williams, Brandon Spikes. So the Steelers have a lot of good defenders, and it's only going to get worse as they add this big man, J.J. Watt. But now we're going to transition to Washington and some of Washington's needs. So Washington has Michael Vick. All right, they were the 17th ranked offense. They do have Colt McCoy as a rookie quarterback option. But now they also have Darius Hayward-Bay. He did really well for them the past 2 years. He was a 2009 first-round pick. They drafted Derek Morgan last year. So they have some decent options. But of course, this is Marty Morningway's first year. He's heading into his second season. Giants and Eagles are very good. Eagles being the most winning team in my franchise in the last 9 years. And the Giants having those moments. But they go with Jonathan Baldwin, wide receiver from Pittsburgh. So this is their attempt to get a playmaker on this team. Someone that can really help with the passing game. They got Darius Hayward-Bay. But really, other than him, not really anybody else. So now they have Hayward-Bay paired with Baldwin. We'll see how that duo pans out. Now, as for the San Francisco 49ers, they are a team that went to back-to-back Super Bowls, but have recently been kind of sluggish. They did miss the playoffs this year, and they, at one point, were leading the division, but losing to the Rams. And then the Seattle Seahawks were second in the division, going 9-8. So we see that their defense has been pretty solid, but you can never have enough defensive players. But I think the 49ers have a lot to work on to try to become that Super Bowl championship team again. You have Drew Brees, you have Arian Foster, you have Dez Bryant, who was brought in last year, Everett Brown on the defensive line. A lot of really solid contributors here, and they just need a little bit more spark on this team. And so the odds are, because they have some depth, even though they've lost a few positions too, they are definitely going to be in need of some defensive talent. So here they are with cornerback Prince Amukamara from Nebraska. Amukamara went to the Giants in real life. I think this is a good pick for the 49ers. Just getting that extra star power in their defensive backfield. They did get Darius Butler with the 31st overall pick in 2009, but of course they can always use more depth and more support here as in their defensive backfield, especially going up against the Rams and the Seahawks and even the Cardinals, who, again, the Cardinals always underperform, but when you have Calvin Johnson Jr. in your division, you're going to need physical corners like Amukamara to be able to guard him. Right there is probably a bad example of that, but it was somehow one of his highlights, and I just kind of allowed it to be in there. But yeah, now as we look to the Seattle Seahawks, right, they have some work to do as well. They had Derek Anderson and Vince Young on their quarterback team. Derek Anderson was leading them to the playoffs, but they lost in Week 18, which allowed the Buccaneers to take on that wild card seed, the 6th seed. And they've kind of ranked right in the middle, right? 19th in offense and 15th in defense. They got Mario Williams, Troy Polamalu. They got some core pieces here. Koa Misi was drafted last year. Paul Kruger. They've got some Ryan Clady, their left tackle. They got running backs like Rashard Mendenhall. They traded away Peyton Hillis. They got Brandon Pettigrew from 2009. So a lot of decent players here. But with this pick, the 18th overall pick, the Seahawks pick, cornerback Ross I. Dowling from Virginia. So here they are getting a cornerback to help with their defense. This is a pick that they haven't really drafted a cornerback. Well, let's see. They never drafted a cornerback in 2010, in 2009, and 2008. No cornerbacks. So first cornerback selected in the last 4 years coming here in the first round. Now we get to Buffalo, who just made the playoffs. They turned their team around in the season after getting rid of Josh Freeman. They had Bruce Gradkowski lead the way. They do have a lot of gaps in this team. Munchak could have been fired if they didn't make the playoffs, but they did, so they end up keeping him for year 4. We'll see if they get a better passer here or if they decide to wait to the second round. Jacoby Jones has been their top receiver. But with the 19th overall selection, the Buffalo Bills select QB Christian Ponder from Florida State. Christian Ponder being one of the better quarterbacks off the board here. We know that Andy Dalton and Kaepernick were better later. But here in this draft, they were definitely into Ponder. He went to the Vikings in real life after Favre retired. But Ponder is there to challenge Bruce Gradkowski. I just noticed right there he might not be able to have his number 7 because Gradkowski has it. But Ponder, I think, is going to be the future of Buffalo. Not sure if Buffalo is really going to have as much success with him, but we shall see. But now we'll start talking a little bit about Chicago. And Chicago, of course, has Mark Sanchez at quarterback. They made the playoffs this past year. Bruce Arians' second year makes the playoffs. Good for him. 9-8. They were 15th and 19th ranked. Arians is really trying to turn this Bears team around. Bears were only good with Rich Gannon, but here they are trying to change the pattern. They lost D'Angelo Williams, a running back, in free agency. He was their pick a while ago. It was really good for them, but now Williams is with the Buffalo Bills, who just picked before them. But they had a good selection last year with Brandon Tate, so I want to keep that alive there. But as you can see, with this 20th overall selection, the Chicago Bears are picking a player who has slipped far in this draft, halfback Mark Ingram II from Alabama. So needing some spark, needing an explosive player, the Bears get Mark Ingram. That was what was supposed to happen with D'Angelo Williams, and it did happen. But Williams had a few years with Chicago, and it was time for them to move on. They parted ways, and so to replace him, they take Mark Ingram. I think this is a good selection for them here. Ingram could have been a top 10 selection, but just like in the real draft, he slipped. And so Chicago is able to take the advantage here. And you can just see some of that running from Ingram. Very dynamic Alabama running back. But now we look at the Minnesota Vikings. So a lot of question marks here. Do they go quarterback to replace Brett Favre? Do they just go with a BPA? Last year they drafted Rob Gronkowski when they lost the Super Bowl. So they got their top tier tight end. They had Mike Wallace in 2009. So they have a lot of decent weapons here on this team. But of course, Favre is a question mark. He may decide to retire between now and the start of the season. He's still in the game currently, but I'll see how the Madden 24 transition works. But with this 21st overall selection, the Minnesota Vikings select DT Nick Fairley from Auburn. Fairley was seen as maybe one of the top prospects in this draft. He could have gone above Darius. Big man, bruiser. In real life, he had some attitude issues. He wasn't always with it in his head, but he was a very frustrating pass rusher that, as you can see, just really hitting the quarterback. So the Vikings are hoping he becomes that man for them. Then you have the Kansas City Chiefs in year 9 for Dick LeBeau. It's been that long. LeBeau was fired from the Bengals, went to the Chiefs, and now he's been there for 9 years, his 9th year coming up. Last year they went with defense, like with Jason Pierre-Paul, Brian Price. The year before they went with Tyson Jackson. This year, who knows who they're going to go with. They had the 12th ranked offense, 5th ranked defense. They do have to compete with the San Diego Chargers, who was a powerhouse team. Yes, they do have Marquise Colston there, and Colston was obviously a 7th round pick in 2006. Very good. They have Austin Collie, who was a 7th round pick in 2009. A lot of 7th round picks for them. But with this 22nd overall pick, the Kansas City Chiefs select tight end Kyle Rudolph out of Notre Dame. So now they do have Dallas Clark, who is good for them. Dallas Clark's a good tight end. But now they bring in youthful size, big man tight end Kyle Rudolph. He is going to be really good for Kansas City and specifically for Eli Manning. Dallas Clark has been good, but of course he's old, so you sometimes miss out on. He's not the big pass catcher. He's a reliable pass catcher and a good blocker. Rudolph is all of those things. So Kansas City is and should be very happy and proud of this selection. Now we look at the Cincinnati Bengals. So we know their quarterback position is pretty solid. They drafted John Skelton last year, and he did very well when he started in place of Tavares Jackson due to injuries. So we see the Bengals really having a lot of bases covered. They traded for Anquan Boldin from the Titans this past offseason, who was a really good pick for them. But him and Dante Stallworth, their top 2 receivers, are 30 years old. No Sean Marino, and it was good for them, but he got hurt for the rest of the season. So Montario Hardesty, the rookie running back, had about almost like a little over 400 yards rushing. Tony Gonzalez technically retired, but I have a feeling he's going to be available in Madden 24, and he's going to come back to the Bengals. Look at that catch by Bolden. My goodness, he was a dynamic receiver. That one-handed catch. Leaping catch there. So with this pick, the Bengals, again, they have the privilege of drafting just BPA. They can take the best available player. And here they are with this pick. So picking with the 23rd overall selection, the Cincinnati Bengals select offensive tackle Anthony Costanzo. So this is a good pick by them, just solidifying their offensive line with one of the best tackles in this draft. So we'll go ahead and see how that pans out. I think that's a good pick for them. We do have the Rams now on the clock. They were the best team in the NFC West, which was a surprise to me. Greg Williams, now heading into his 3rd year, made the playoffs both years. He's been the Rams coach with Jay Cutler. They traded for Cutler, and they got their QB. Cutler, who struggled with Green Bay, is not struggling here in St. Louis. They were the 11th ranked offense and the 23rd ranked defense. Right now, they have the privilege of picking BPA. A lot of their primary positions are already covered. You got Crabtree, you got Roy Williams as receivers. You see Torrey Holt there, the old man, making plays. But with this 24th overall selection, the Rams select defensive end Robert Quinn out of North Carolina. Quinn is a great pass rusher, at least was listed as a great pass rusher. Interesting, the Browns chose Bruce Carter instead of Robert Quinn, who they both came from North Carolina. Quinn did have some question marks with his health. His injury history was in question. But the Rams did pick Quinn in real life, so I made that a reality here again. So Robert Quinn is going to be in the gold and blue, the navy blue. Now we look at the New York Jets. Jets were one of the top teams in the league, just behind the Patriots. That's a tough duel, Patriots and Jets, Alex Smith and Tom Brady. Todd Haley's first year, they went 11-6, 7th ranked offense. Clinton Portis was the MVP of the league. So many talented players here on this Jets team. Last year they got Ndamukong Suh. The year before that, they got Percy Harvin. So many talented players. They do have Aaron Hernandez, so they'll have to deal with his legal issues coming up. There's Mercedes Lewis, who was their 2006 first-round pick. So very much talented, but with this the 25th overall selection, the New York Jets select the offensive lineman center Stefan Wisniewski from Penn State. Here they go and solidify the interior of their O-line. Again, they're going up against the Pats. They're going up against now the Dolphins and the Bills. 3 playoff teams out of this division, and now they have Newton, and now they have other things to deal with. So we look to the Jets to really solidify that offensive line, and they do. Now we look at the San Diego Chargers coming up on the clock. They are fantastic with Aaron Rodgers. They traded for Larry Johnson, and they paired him with Beanie Chris Wells, who's a bruising running back from Ohio State. Wide receiver Santonio Holmes and tight end Antonio Gates. They've got veteran receiver Lee Evans. So much talent on this team. Even their defense. They got Kyle Wilson as a cornerback. They have DeAndre Levy, Antoine Cason. So a lot of talented players here on this team. Even Devin Hester as a return man, even though I don't think he's ever had a touchdown in my franchise because those are hard to come by. Still a very talented player, speedy guy. But with the 26th overall selection, the San Diego Chargers select outside linebacker Akeem Ayers from UCLA. Here they just go with the BPA. They go with the best linebacker they can think of, and they bring him in. So Ayers is the pick here for the San Diego Chargers. When you have a talented team, you just add on depth and you take the best possible player at the position. And linebacker is a need all around the league, and the Chargers get that. Now we look at the Philadelphia Eagles. They are on the clock. Last year they drafted Earl Thomas. They have Eric Decker, Mark Marini, 2nd round, 7th round picks respectively. They had Thaddeus Lewis later on, who ended up not being very well overall. Ray Maluga in 2009. But they have speedsters like Ted Ginn, Deshaun Jackson, Heath Miller at tight end. They traded for Frank Gore, and they still have Amon Green. So a lot of talented players. Donovan McNabb at the top of the league, top of his game. But with this pick, the 27th overall pick, the Eagles select DT Corey Liuget. He went to the Chargers in real life. He slipped a bit more in my draft than in real life, but again, he didn't really pan out in real life. But this powerful defensive tackle here is going to the Eagles to help their interior line. We'll see how it pans out, but again, he's going to a really good team, so his career might be more long-term because of where he landed. As for the Panthers, they're number 1 ranked defense, and then thanks to Joe Flacco, Lorenzo Booker, Ben Tate on their running back core, they are the 9th ranked offense, and they were the number 1 team in the NFC. They lost in that divisional round to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in overtime. It was a frustrating loss. I thought the Panthers should have gone against the Giants, but the Buccaneers snuck it out. So with this pick here, they're looking for more explosiveness. Steve Smith can't carry it alone. They lost Henderson, their former 1st-round pick, wide receiver. So they go with wide receiver Torrey Smith from Maryland. This is a unique pairing because he is joining Joe Flacco. So Joe Flacco with the Ravens, they brought in Torrey Smith to Baltimore this draft. And now I'm pairing Flacco with Torrey Smith in Baltimore once again, or here in Carolina, where they can be wide receiver QB pairs together. And look at some of those highlights by Torrey Smith, great receiver. He is definitely going to bring the spark that I'm talking about to the Panthers, especially as Steve Smith ages. I could even consider getting rid of Steve Smith. Then we have the Colts on the clock with Bill Cowher heading into his 3rd year. He is searching for his Super Bowl. He failed to get one in Pittsburgh, failed to even win more than 6 games in Cleveland. Now he's trying it with the Indianapolis Colts. 2 years. Last year he lost to the Patriots in the AFC Championship game. But now he's looking for more. Who are they going to go with? They're the 2nd-ranked offense. They were the worst defense in the league. And sometimes that happens when you're high on offense or high on defense. You have a bad opposite there. So the 32nd-ranked defense they need some help with. So they're likely going defense prospect here. I mean, they could go with a receiver. I mean, other than Reggie Wayne, the Colts' wide receivers have always been scrubs that Manning has made look better. From Jason Hill, PK Sam. They drafted some. They have Victor Cruz, who could be very good for them, but Cruz might need some more work. But with this pick, the 29th overall selection, the Indianapolis Colts select Ryan Kerrigan, pass rusher from Purdue. So now they get a pass rusher to really help out on this defensive front here. They desperately need some help on this defensive team. Statistically, they look pretty good. They've got a lot of decent players like Freeney and so forth. But they need some help, and Ryan Kerrigan is going to do that for them. So now we get to the 30th pick, the Giants, who lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the NFC Championship game in overtime. We have Jim Caldwell in his second season. And notice the Giants, who are supposed to be this iconic defense with the 31st ranked defense, not doing so well. Carson Palmer, Ryan Matthews. Ryan Matthews, a rookie, winning Rookie of the Year. He led the league in rushing. He was so dynamic. So because of Palmer and Matthews, they were the 4th ranked offense. Second in the NFC East behind the Eagles, who were a little bit above them. They were still 11-6, the top wild card seed. And so they are probably going to go defense here because they need all the help they can get. But you see Jerome Simpson there being the number 1 pass catcher for Carson Palmer and even Matt Schaub before then. Simpson has really been the top-notch player there for the Giants. And they even had Jimmy Graham last year as tight end. So with the 30th overall selection, the New York Giants select pass rusher Adrian Claiborne out of Iowa. This man is mean. This man is ferocious. He is not putting up with anything. Look at those hard hits. I think he's a great selection for the New York Giants here in the first round. He is going to cause some problems there for Philly, for Dallas, for Washington. So very happy with this pick. So now we're going to go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the NFC champions. Shockingly, they are the 3rd ranked offense in the league. And that's with Culpepper and Byron Leftwich throwing the ball. Darren McFadden, who had a very low year, but you also had Javid Best, who had a great year rushing the ball. He was a rookie last year in the 2nd round. Javid Best played many snaps because of the injured Darren McFadden. And Culpepper might be an option in free agency. However, I'm going to have him probably be very low injury, so he's going to get injured more likely because he had a huge injury in week 4. But there's a lot of needs there. Byron Leftwich did leave the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so they have Matt Schaub at quarterback, who they acquired in free agency. So I suspect QB is in their future, whether it's this pick or next one. And here we go with the 30th overall selection. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers select QB Blaine Gabbert from Mizzou, Missouri. Blaine Gabbert, I mean, yeah, he's not going to pan out probably too well. However, just like Kevin O'Connell, just like Brody Croyle, he could get the Tampa Bay Buccaneers back to a high-status team. But we see there Tampa Bay getting their quarterback, Blaine Gabbert. So instead of going to the Jacksonville Jaguars, he just goes to the other Florida team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. New England, again, every time they have a draft, they're always just drafting need because they normally don't have any other cap space to sign anybody to fill their roster. So these picks are always random for New England. They were the 6th ranked offense, the 26th ranked defense. Again, when you're a high offense, sometimes you're a low defense because it's normally you're a high scoring team and then you allow garbage time. But they have Jamal Charles. They did lose Ahmad Bradshaw. They picked up Tony Hunt in free agency. They got Leonard Pope at tight end. They traded away Randy Moss after a few years winning Super Bowls with him, but they have Andre Johnson, Josh Morgan, Brandon Tate, a lot of solid receiving options for Tom, a really good O-line. They have some top-notch defensive prospects like Jerry Hughes. They have like offensive like Marshall Yanda, Marcel Reese at fullback. But with this pick, you have the New England Patriots selecting tight end Lance Kendricks from Wisconsin. Patriots conclude this first round with a tight end pick. And to continue the draft, we see in the second round, Rodney Hudson becomes the first pick of the second round. A little bit later, you see the Arizona Cardinals drafting Andy Dalton. This is a pick that might replace Phillip Rivers. Rivers has been decent for the Cardinals, but he also has a lot of weapons. And he's sort of been the journeyman quarterback. So now all of a sudden, Andy Dalton will actually give Rivers some competition to encourage him to win some games. Browns do get Phil Taylor, who was their real-life first-round pick. So they get Bruce Carter and Phil Taylor. Dallas Cowboys get Greg Little. I don't know what it is about me and the Cowboys drafting old Browns receivers. They went with Braylon Edwards, and now they're going with Greg Little. Daquan Bowers comes off the board for the Detroit Lions. as well as Colin Kaepernick, a Baltimore Raven. So the Ravens are able to get Aldon Smith in the first round, which is a good pick for them, and then Colin Kaepernick, their quarterback of the future. He may have a chance to start. Josh Johnson did well last year when he got an opportunity, but he also failed to make the playoffs. Given starting 1-5 wasn't helpful with Matt Schaub. But Kaepernick definitely has more of an upside than Mike Kafka and Josh Johnson. Jabal Sheard goes to the Atlanta Falcons, so they get offensive line and pass rush. DeMarco Murray comes off the board to run for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They've been working with Marion Barber, and Barber just is not the same caliber as DeMarco Murray. Muhammad Wilkinson comes off the board for the Titans. Vincent Brown, going to be a swing and a miss there for Pittsburgh, but they were trying to get some younger wide receiver help. Derek Sherrard for Washington. Hayward, the Ohio State Buckeye, going to the 49ers. Now, Brett Favre did not retire in my franchise, but I don't know if he's going to be available next year when I'm in Madden 24, so I did draft Ryan Mallett. So there's Ryan Mallett and Brian Hoyer, the backups to Brett Favre, or potentially the starting options for the Vikings. Let's see, anyone else interesting here? We have Marcus Gilbert going to the Giants, and then Stephen Ridley does go to the New England Patriots like he did in real life. Starting the third round, we see Randall Cobb going to the Green Bay Packers, as he did in real life, just one round earlier. So really 3 great picks for the Green Bay Packers, from Von Miller, Rodney Hudson, Randall Cobb. That's, home run 3 times. We have Marcus Gilchrist going to the Dolphins. The Browns draft Terrell Pryor. Now, Pryor was not in the draft, and he went in the supplemental draft. But since he was available, I thought, well, he went in the 3rd round in the supplemental draft. I could see the Browns reaching on a quarterback like him, because Jim Tressel is the coach of the Browns, the former Ohio State coach. And I could see him thinking, yeah, I'm going to get Terrell Pryor. He's going to change the Browns. And it's going to be interesting to see how Pryor does as a quarterback for the Browns. We know he's not a good passer, but he is a runner, so he could electrify Cleveland in a little bit. Jarrell Casey, the DT, the solid man, is going to the Ravens to help that Ravens defense. Steelers drafted Jordan Todman as running back. Now, Todman is probably not someone you know of, but I remember when I was playing Madden around this time frame, I always really enjoyed him as like a 66, 67 overall backup running back. Todman always did great for me. I think he did end up on the Steelers in real life too. Rest of the 3rd round, you can see Luke Stalker going to 49ers, Jai Reed going to the Panthers. Tyrod Taylor is going to the Indianapolis Colts. So now we have Brady Quinn and possibly Tyrod Taylor being the starting quarterback for the Colts, given the potential Manning injury. Jordan Cameron going to the Green Bay Packers. In real life, he went to the Browns. Cameron filling in the Zach Miller void of tight end at Green Bay. Pernell McPhee going to Miami. We see Buster Screen, a real-life pick to the Browns. Clint Bowling to the Cowboys. Marcus Cannon, good mid-round pick there for Oakland. Chimdi Chikwa, Washington. Patriots pull in TJ Yates for 4th-round QB. Ricardo Lockett going to the Seahawks as he did in real life. Malcolm Smith, the good linebacker there for the Broncos. Deion Lewis goes to the 49ers to be a backup to Arian Foster, and we know Deion Lewis is more of a receiving back. So Foster can be the bruiser back, and Deion Lewis can be the pass catcher for Drew Brees. I think that's a good combination there. Here we are in the later picks. Richard Sherman comes off the board, and he goes to the Arizona Cardinals. So this is a interesting pick there where they didn't get Patrick Peterson like they did in real life, but they do come away with Richard Sherman, who has played for the 49ers and was known with the Legion of Boom with Seattle. Alex Henry comes off the board for Cleveland. Definitely a high pick for a kicker, but that's Cleveland be doing Cleveland. Cecil Shorts goes to the Ravens. Gerard Johnson to the Atlanta Falcons. We see Denarius Moore. He was a decent receiver for the Raiders. He had kind of a spark for them one year. Now he's going to Tennessee. Hakeem Dent, a linebacker for Pittsburgh. Aldrick Robinson for Dallas. Charles Clay, the fullback or tight end for Philadelphia. I think that's going to be a good pick for them. Colts have a Torrey Gurley wide receiver there. He's probably not going to turn into anything. Dijon Gomez, the strong safety. Jason Pinkston going to the Dolphins. Let's see, anyone interesting? Owen Marisic, a fullback, going to Detroit. Let's see, anyone in? Doug Baldwin gets an opportunity there with the Minnesota Vikings. Dwayne Harris to Chargers. Chris Harris Jr. Ends up landing on the best defense in the league, so definitely a good late-round pick there, a 6th-round pick for the Carolina Panthers, pulling off a great future cornerback for them in the 6th round. And as we conclude the 7th round here, we see Kai Forbath going to Dallas as a kicker. Not really any final picks here that really are going to be, other than Derek Newton probably with Buffalo, he's a decent pick. Chris Hogan, who was undrafted going to the Patriots in real life, he just gets picked up here in the 7th round. And the Patriots also get Cliff Matthews to be the Mr. Irrelevant. So thanks for watching the draft. I hope you enjoyed the theatrics of this video. I will have a separate video where I analyze each of the different teams and who they drafted.